see, because the war started, what, 3 years? We were in the war 3 years before you all came in. And we had it pretty rough, but we were good. Then we were determined that Hitler was not going to get to us. Let's put it that way. He did send a fleet of boats with soldiers in across the channel, which is 22, it's only 22 miles between England and France. And these boats were filled with Italian soldiers. He wouldn't send his own Germans, the Italian soldiers. And we set fire to the channel. So we had quite a lot of dead Italian soldiers, but we also had a lot of that were captured, and they were in England, and they were allowed to do exactly what they wanted. They were in camps, but they would walk around the town, and they'd go to the movies, and they never bothered us. We never bothered them. We weren't frightened of them, and I could sit in my bedroom and actually watch the bombs drop on London. Well, the flares, as they dropped on London, because Oxford is about 50 miles above London, and I could sit and watch it.
So,
and I was 16. I decided to.
When was that? Like, what year was it? 1940?
Oh, that would be 1930.
No.
Oh no, it's not that early. That would have been about 19. You came in what, at 40?
I wasn't even a twinkle in your eye. I didn't come.
30.
You came in 40, 42?
I think so. Yeah.
About 40.
At 41, right after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of you landed in Ireland.
Right.
And then from Ireland you came to England. And I was 16 when I decided I wanted to do something, so I joined my dad signed for me because I wasn't old enough. I was only 16. And I was stationed in Peterhead, which is in Scotland. And I loved it. We had, it was not a fighting aerodrome, it was where the pilots came to retrain. And all around us were Mustangs sitting in the, where they had crashed, those in the grounds. And the Norwegian Navy, they left Norway and they came to England, and they came to Peterhead. So we had all these lovely Norwegian men. I had a Spaniard. He was really tall, but I was a good girl. We didn't do things like that in those days. Anyway, I enjoyed it. But then my youngest brother, he's a little older, a year and a half older than me, they called him up. So Mother said, because my dad was a bus driver, and he didn't have much money, you know, and she had 2 small children at home, my younger brother and younger sister. So she decided I had to come home. So I came back, got a job in a factory with that overhead. I drove an overhead crane. We made tanks. And then, of course, the Americans came. And they built a hospital where I lived, near where I lived, Headington, which is the outskirts of Oxford City itself. And they built this hospital for the Americans. And her father was a vampire. That's what they called him. He drew blood and did that kind of thing. And I used to go to dances. And I always paid for myself. Never let anybody pay for me, because that way, if I wanted to leave, I could leave, you know? And that was the first time I saw him. And he saw me. And he said, "That's the girl I'm going to marry." Anyway.
So
So-
you met at the dance.
I met at a dance. And we went out just now and then. And I took him home, and my mother saw him. She says, "Oh, you don't want to go with him, he's a German." I said, "No, he's not, Mother." I said, "He's Pennsylvanian Dutch." I didn't know that they were German, that it was Deutsch, you know? Anyway.
Weren't you on rations back then, too?
Oh, yeah, well, rations. You had to think about that.
What was that like?
It was... We kept chickens at the bottom of the garden, because we could only get 2 or 3 eggs. And if you kept chickens, you couldn't get the eggs. You could get chicken feed. Butter, margarine, everything that you can possibly think of was rationed. Couldn't buy clothes. Couldn't afford clothes. And the butcher used to save my mother the big bones, and she would bring them home and make stew and that out of them. Because, as I say, my dad was just a bus driver and he didn't make that much money. But everything you can think of was rationed. We had that was my mother's identification card. Identity card. You had to have one of those. I don't know what happened to mine, but you had to have one of those so people knew who you were.
Okay. And does that have anything to do with, like, as far as when you would go to pick up rations, or did they, like, how was that distributed to show your identity card so that...
I honestly don't know. I guess we had ration books. But you see, my mother did all that kind of thing. So,
Was it more like a license, like how we have our identification?
yes.
Like that?
Yeah, well, we did,
Okay.
yeah. It was like if anything happened, got your identity card to show people. But,
Didn't Dad bring stuff too?
yeah, as I say, my mother, don't want to be German. No, he's not, Mother. Anyway, he bought her chocolates. And my mother smoked like a chimney. So he bought her cigarettes. So she loved him. She loved him. I can't say the same for my father. When we got married, my father wouldn't stand up for me. My eldest brother did. Reggie. But then, of course, they began with D-Day. And that was something different. That was when it all came together. And it was pretty bad. And came on D-Day, came out, you couldn't see the sky. All you could see were planes. It was completely black. Planes going to France. Some of them were pulling, what would you call them? Had men in them.
the U-boats that they would drop in the water? Or?
No, they were, the men jumped out of them.
Oh.
Like a dirigible? Like the balloons?
No, they were pulled behind the plane.
The plane.
The plane were fighters and bombers, but they drew these.
It was like an air raft.
Yeah.
right? That they would.
And they were
would
full of
jump
men,
from that.
and those men, they parachuted out. And my cousin, only my father's sister, her son, he drove a tank. He was in a tank, and it was blown up right there on D-Day. So, but as I say, it was pretty bad.
So when
You see, I blocked a lot of this out. You block it out. And as you grow older, sometimes you remember certain things that if there's something that you want to know, maybe I can tell you.
So like when you mentioned the bombings and you know, when all that was going on, what was, you know, you said you could see the flares
flash,
from
yeah.
the bombs and everything. You know, after that, what was the city like? What was it? You know,
London?
how did it change? Yeah.
Well, they bombed London. In fact, when the Prime Minister declared war and said we're at war because Germany went into, I think, it wasn't Poland, it was one of the other ones.
Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia.
It was one of those, anyway.
Yeah.
He was told not to do any more of it, and he went into this country anyway. And the Prime Minister said over the radio, because no television in those days, I'm afraid we're at war. And that moment, German bombers were over London and began bombing it before we could do anything. And they kept on, and they wiped a lot of London out. And the people were marvellous. The people that lived there, they took it all. English people are very funny people. You get a true Englishman, they won't give up. I mean, we had what they called well, it was an army, but it was of the older men, the men that couldn't join, and the farmers, and they picked up, when all this started to happen, they picked up anything they could. We'll fight them. Let them come here. And these people, they literally, the older men turned into, they had their own army. It was a little army of these older men guarding England. They captured quite a few Germans that parachuted in. So they were marvellous, really. It's a hard thing to talk about. It's a really hard thing to talk about. So.
But you blacked out windows and all at night too, didn't you?
Oh yeah, everything was blacked out. No traffic lights.
So like the power?
The
had gone
power.
out? Okay.
No, they just turned it off.
Oh.
They just turned it off. So that the Germans could not. And Oxford, where I lived, wasn't bombed because Hitler, that was where he was going to make his headquarters, because it's the biggest university city. And even though all around it were factories making arms, as I say, tanks, only once did we ever get a firebomb, which was accidentally dropped, and it was dropped on the zoo in Kidlington. Kidlington had a little zoo.
On the zoo?
They had a little zoo, and this German was going back over, and apparently he had one firebomb left, so he dropped it, and it hit the zoo. So, But that was the only one that,
So Oxford was the only place.
it was the only place that,
Well, there's so much history there between the palaces, the colleges, the churches, the museums. I mean, museums.
biggest museum.
Museums are. If you ever go, London's sticky.
No, you don't want to go to London.
Don't go
Whatever you do, don't
Oxford.
want to go to London.
Go to Oxford. Go to Bath. That's the other area that was on.
Well, I mean, I know Oxford just because of Oxford University,
Yeah.
but I mean that's
Well,
all
but
I
I mean,
really know
it's-
about it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how much is there in the museums and in the. Is that where the book place is?
Yeah.
That's what the oldest, biggest book.
The,
Can't think of the name of it. I got pictures of it somewhere. It's a big round building, and it's got the oldest. It's got like the largest and oldest collection of books in the world.
it begins with a B.
But it's unbelievable.
Begins with, I've got it.
This is where everything was, and this is what Hitler wanted.
Right.
Because I mean he was collecting art from everywhere, and here it all was in this pristine.
It's all right if I
Little-
stand up for a minute.
Sure. What do you need?
Well, there we go.
Now, after you and Dad got married, he left, didn't he?
Yeah, he went to France. Yeah.
So you got married in England,
We got married in England.
and how old were you then? Because you said that when you were 16, you joined the
I was-
military.
I got married on the 1st of September, and my 19th birthday was on the 14th. So, but yes, after we got married, and a lot of the girls had to get married, you know. And for a while after I was married, we saw the neighbors were looking at them. She doesn't have a bump yet. You know. No way. Anyway, he was going to France. They were going to France. And that was when I decided to have my eldest daughter. So I'd have something if, God forbid, he didn't come back. And he was at the Battle of the Bulge. And he ended up in Nancy, which is right on the border of France and Belgium, in the hospital they got there. So he didn't talk about it. He didn't, but the men didn't talk, the soldiers didn't talk about what had happened over there. Very few of them did. And he came back once. That's where the pictures were standing in the park. We're standing in the park, and he.
Well, he came back once while you were pregnant, because I got that picture out of another album.
Yeah, I was looking to see whether it was here or not. I've got it with Nancy.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a picture of me with my.
Just get a little shot of it in there.
It's that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. In those days, we were, as you can see, the kind of things we wear. You didn't show your bump off like they do here, like they do today. You covered it up. And that was taken in the back garden. Yeah.
So
And
how long?
then he went back, and he came back again just before he left to come back to America. Then he was sent back, I think it was in 45, and I came over in 46.
Okay, so how long? So you guys were married for how long before you actually came to America and began your lives together here?
Oh, I guess I was married in 43, and I came over in 46. So
Okay.
3 years,
About 3 years. Okay.
about 3 years.
And he was over there for 2 of the 3 years.
I met him, I guess I met him when? In,
Library. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
he was in Ireland.
Like a castle.
Then he came over.
And I mean, it's done early
I guess I met him
before they were
actually very early in the beginning of
It's unbelievable.
43, same year we were married. Must have been in January or the last few months of 42. But, yeah.
And what
Okay,
did they do with the brides when the men left?
Well, actually, nothing. We just carried on with what we were doing. At that time, I was a conductress on the buses, the double-decker buses. My dad was a driver. One of my brothers was a driver. So I went back on the buses. And for a while, I was what they called a conductress. Chippy. And then we got letters telling us that we had to be at a certain place at a certain day. And I don't remember the exact day. I remember the day that we arrived in America because it was Easter Sunday. And we couldn't get off the boat. Well, because everybody was on holiday.
You came over on the Queen Mary.
I came over on the Queen Mary.
So what was that like?
Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah, of course it wasn't as fancy as it was later on, because it had been used as a troop ship. But they had cleaned it all out, but there were three girls in one cabin, and they had babies. Everybody had babies. But when we got off the boat, I was put on the train to Baltimore. And her father met me at the station in Baltimore. He didn't come to New York. Some of the men did, but he didn't.
I wasn't.
No, you
Do
wasn't
you know
born.
why he didn't? Like, what was?
I have no idea.
No idea what was behind his decision.
No. He, I guess being as it was Easter and that, it was very busy, and he worked for ADT, and maybe he couldn't afford it, let's put it that way. I honestly don't know. Maybe he couldn't afford to travel all that way, and then this way they paid for my tickets, you see, back.
So you went
To
in were
Baltimore.
by yourselves, just getting off a boat and coming through Ennis. You came through Ennis Island, right?
Yeah. And then we came through, as I say, we put on trains.
What was?
It was
the-
pretty bad. It was it was pretty horrible.
What was the experience of coming through Ellis Island like? Like, what was the? I mean, we see a lot of movies about,
I don't honestly remember.
No.
I don't remember. I know they came onto the ship itself and went through all our papers. We didn't have to do that when we landed. They came aboard at the official came aboard and did all that. So, but I honestly don't remember too much.
Do you know what your, how you felt? Do you remember like what your feelings were when you first arrived in America and you were going to see your husband for the first time in such a long time?
Obviously, this is not a good feeling, so you don't have to go there.
That's okay.
You don't have to go there.
No.
So when he was, when you were in London and he was in France, do you know about how long he would be in France for before he came back to Oxford?
No.
No idea.
No idea. As I say, a lot of that was just blanked out. There was so much. I don't even remember how long the war in France, how long they were in France, to be quite truthful.
And did they give him any kind of notice or anything, or they just told him pack up and they sent him that day? And
You're near enough.
yeah.
Yeah. But we do know Eisenhower was the commander-in-chief, which we did not like, I'll tell you quite frankly. And do you know what he was doing while they were sailing across the channel into France? He was playing golf.
That's what they do, isn't it?
Yeah.
In times of crisis.
Yeah, go hit a club.
So with, were there any, like, special privileges for, brides of soldiers or anything?
No, not really. We were told that after we had lived here 5 years, we would become American citizens. Didn't happen.
Even though you were married to an American?
Didn't happen. So I'd been here about 5 years. This was in 46. I'd been here about 5 years. And I had begun to take lessons and that for the citizenship. And do you know, I couldn't get one person to take off half an hour and go with me to the court and say they had known me for 5 years. And I said, excuse my language, I said, bugger that, I'll stay British. And I did. I never tried again.
Not worth it. Just with all the havoc and everything that came along with it, it just wasn't worth trying again.
It wasn't, no.
Was it difficult to live here and not be an American citizen at the time?
No, not really.
No.
No, the only thing is I have a green card. And ever need it, But no, there's no problem. But we were not liked. The British brides were not liked. War brides were not liked by the American girls in those days.
Why?
Because we married their men.
Oh.
In fact, I think at least a third of the women that married Americans went back home.
They didn't stay, and they just estranged their spouse and went back home, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, did you know any of them, or why they did that, or?
No, I knew a couple, but I knew one girl. The man she had married was well, I hate to say it, but he was a hillbilly type. And she just could not take that kind of living. Even though in England we're not rich but she couldn't take that kind of living, and she went back home. But no, I have to admit, they did change when they came back.
The soldiers or the brides?
The men.
Soldiers. The men?
Yeah, they did change.
They changed when they came back, that whole, the shell shock thing, the...
They changed.
Okay. But I mean, obviously you stayed. And
Obviously.
how many children did you have?
5.
5? Okay. And Connie, you're the
Second.
second. Okay.
I was firstborn here.
Okay. Firstborn here.
Yeah. My eldest daughter, Anne, she had dual citizenship. When she was born, she was registered right with the American Embassy. So she had dual citizenship.
Okay. And so you stayed here and raised 5 children, and were you, a homekeeper, or did you,
Oh, no.
You worked?
Oh, yeah.
So what'd you do here?
Just,
She was a homemaker.
I was a homemaker.
Oh, you were a homemaker.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, she
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
work.
No.
No, she didn't work outside the home.
Okay.
5 kids and
And where did you come to originally? I know-
Baltimore.
Baltimore. Okay, that's right. You took
Yeah.
And you were in Baltimore for
We lived there for, well, let's see. He had bought the house before I didn't even see it, and it was horrible. It was a row house. And it was in what they call Brooklyn in Baltimore.
Those are those
It's in-
tight little houses, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. So we lived there for about, you were what?
About 7.
You were about 7
Oh, we knew.
when we went looking for another house. And we went to, we looked and couldn't find one. And we were coming home, and we were in what they call Anne Arundel County, which is just outside of Baltimore itself. And we saw these houses, they were split levels. Oh, well, we'll have a look. So we stopped and we went and we looked. This was it. And we stayed there right up until the time he passed away.
And he died fairly young. He was only, what,
65.
65.
He just had his 65th birthday.
Was it just natural causes or was it
Heart.
like a heart disease?
Yeah.
Heart attack.
Yeah. Oh, he was sick for 10 years. He was very, very young when he had his first. He was in his 40s.
39.
Yeah, when he
39.
had his first heart attacks, and he never had just one. He always had 2 or 3, one right after the other. He came home from work one day, and we were going to a Lions Club meeting that night or dinner. And he said, "I think I've had a heart attack." Well, he says, "I know I've had a heart attack." So I took him to the doctor, and he ended up going back to work that Monday because it didn't show up on the EKG. But the doctor said sometimes it doesn't do that. And so he went to work that Monday, and he didn't get there. He ended up in the hospital, and he was in there for 72 days.
Mm-hmm.
Days.
So,
Well, then he got out for 3 months and had another one and went back in for almost the same amount of time.
Oh wow.
actually, it was 5 years between the first set and the second set, because I was told to watch him the 5th year afterwards, and that's when that happened. And he,
Most of them that Dad knew that were all in the service, that were all in that same era, they all died young like that. That's why I'm so amazed when I see some of these World War II veterans
Right.
out and about that we see, the different functions, to see them, because it just, most of all of the guys he were his friends and stuff that he hung with that were in that same age group, if they were over there, they all had coronary. They all had different issues going on.
Yeah, these are all.
Every war has their own thing, it seems like, that they come back suffering with.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, they were all exposed to the chemicals. They were all exposed to all of it. And with him being a medic, you know, and they had mustard gas and everything else they were throwing around back then, and he was dealing with the people with it. But
No, they.
but her brothers
Anyway.
your brothers were all in the service too. Them almost all of them.
Yeah. But they all died. Not, in their 80s.
Yeah.
They were all.
And your father was what, World War One?
He was, yeah. He was in Africa, South Africa, during World War One, and he was the chauffeur to General Smith, something rather Smith, who became Prime Minister of South America for 2 terms. So.
South Africa?
South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what, building your life here, what are, some of the great memories that you had with your husband and your children here?
Well,
once you
actually,
started making your home and...
There really wasn't much at all, was there? We were just plain people.
Is there any specific events that you remember really well? Like, there was the Kennedy assassination and...
Oh, well, I was doing the ironing when that happened. I was watching General Hospital, I think it was. That was my soap opera, General Hospital. And I was ironing. But no, we were a very quiet family. We went to Williamsburg and Ocean City and places like that now and then. Do you remember anything?
No, my father worked all the time, and Mom didn't go out much. She was a little more reclusive, so she didn't.
Well, we would go to Christmas parties and New Year's parties.
And
At the neighbors.
Lions Club, and then he got in the Coast Guard Auxiliary,
Yeah,
and you did quite a bit of socializing with the Coast Guard Auxiliary when he was in that.
yeah. But as far as the neighbors themselves in the development that we lived, and it was a lovely development, they had a clique. There were only 2 or 3 people living in the development when we moved in. And these women had all got together and formed a coffee clutch, you see. And when I came in, I wasn't invited. And when I asked why, oh, you've got small children. They had small children. And then a friend of mine, Mary Frances, she moved in, and the next thing you know, because they were American and I was not. We'd go to parties at the houses. The women would sit, well, like you are, talking amongst themselves. And I'm sitting there. They had been on trips and that together. I'm sitting there. So in the end, I refused to go. And
In her age group, it was very hard on these brides.
Yeah.
Because I've heard it from quite a few of them that came from Ireland, and it was very hard on all the brides that came over. And a lot of, some of them, depending on what their husbands did in society, if their husbands were in the banking or into higher up, they kind of had to accept the wives.
Yeah.
But otherwise, and I've seen it over the years myself, most of the war brides, when you sit and really talk to them, they were shunned. So, you can't say it's been a happy life, you know, when you're not accepted. So she's you know.
Well, after
trying
he
to amend
passed away,
herself.
I went home. I went back to England.
Okay. And then
My
you
brother.
guys were all grown by then.
Oh yes, they all got their own lives. They didn't need me. But my brother did. So I went back and I lived with him until he passed away. He was in his 80s. Then they decided I had to come back because I was all alone. All I had was my niece Bridget and her husband, which they're marvellous, really and truly. And they looked after me. They came and looked, see that I was all right. Well, at least once a week Bridget came. And but the kids decided I should come back. So that took a while because I'd let my green card lapse. So we had to apply for another one.
Actually didn't have a green card. I had to adopt her. Can you believe that? She lived her whole life in this country, and I basically, what had happened was the last time she was here, which was I think 2007, she'd been traveling on a blue card. They gave them all blue cards. So all the time she traveled on a blue card. Went to Australia with my dad. Her and Dad went to Australia on 2 trips, and she went all over the place on a blue card. And in '07, when her brother took a fall and she had to cut her visit here short and went through the airport, they said, "Oh, we're not using these anymore. You need to fill this paper out, and we'll get another kind of card." Well, she didn't know what it was. She didn't understand what it was, and she went back, and he'd fallen and taken. So she didn't do anything with it. So when it was decided she would come back, she was here. You're in your 4th year here. She's going through all the motions to get everything ready to come back. They tell her she can't come. She's got to reapply. If you could have seen what I went through to get her a green card, it took almost 2 years. Now, she lived in this country 40-some years, had 5 children here, you know, all these grandchildren, great-grandchildren, everything in this country.
Great-great-grandchildren.
Great-great-great-grandchildren. What I went through to get her back in here. I mean, we had to go back and research her parents, where they were born, and when they got married, her grandparents. I had to go back all the way through that. I had to get all the documentation together from all the papers from her and Dad. Then I had to prove all my, because I was going to be her sponsor. I had to, even though I have a passport, I had to go through the whole thing. I ended up going over. They took our money the first time. It was expensive. It was a couple $1,000s to file it all, because one thing was missing. They trashed it, and they keep the money. They keep the money. They trashed it, and it's like, well, what about the money? I got to reapply. Let me have the money back. Nope, it's gone. I got so frustrated. I walked into Congressman Connie Mack's office over in the Cape. I was angry. I mean, I had a stack of paper that big. And I went in there to Connie Mack. And they were like, "Can we help you?" And I just plopped the papers on there and said, "Yeah, I need help." I said, "Here's the situation." I said, "She lived here all this time. She's provided 5 American citizens here and all these, and I can't get her back in the country." They referred me to the Amigo Center. And I ended up going to the Amigo Center here in Fort Myers, and between Connie Mack's office and the Amigo Center, working through all that paper again, refiling all that paper again, is what it took for me to get her back over.
So when did you come back?
4 years, September. It was.
September. I came back on my birthday. I arrived on my birthday
Yep.
4 years ago. Yeah.
Okay. And now you have a green card.
Now I've got a green card.
Okay.
She's legal.
Now I'm legal.
If she could have walked better without a walker, I think I'd have brought her in through Mexico. I could have walked her over the border.
What are some of your most memorable moments throughout your life? And you've lived a long, happy life. What are some of your most cherished memories?
Well, I guess having their children. And most of them were born at home. She wasn't. But they all decided to come very quickly. And
No warning system.
no. One was born in the middle of the Thanksgiving dinner. Sarah, my youngest daughter, was born in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. We were at my brother-in-law at his house having dinner. They were out at,
Well, they lived about 30 miles from where we were,
Right.
maybe further. Drive time at least an hour away.
Right.
so we're sitting at the table and the water broke. And that was it.
And all I can remember from that day was her saying to my father, turning to my father and going, "Oh, I think I swallowed my tooth." And all those kids got all upset. She swallowed her tooth. Well, you know, we're all looking at the food because there's all this great food on the table there. And they're like, "You kids need to go upstairs." And we're all looking at all this food. You know, it's like, Mom swallowed her tooth. You know, we got it. And next thing we know, she's gone.
And there, her father, he would not leave without having the turkey neck. That was he loved the turkey neck. And he's driving down from Baltimore to where we lived, chewing on the
Oh, that's so
turkey
funny.
neck. So we stopped at the doctor's office, which was in
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. And he examined me and he says, "Oh, you've got about a couple of hours." Luckily, his nurse followed us down. Because I no sooner got in the house and I said, "Okay, I'm either the PA or the baby was there."
Okay. I'm trying to think what some like good questions. So I mean, you've seen, you know, history unfold in London and on the Queen Mary and here, and what would be your best advice to the younger generation, to this generation?
Oh, Lord. Oh, that's a hard one. To be true to themselves. That's a hard one.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah. As I say, don't follow the clique. In other words, be yourself. Your own thoughts, not somebody else's. If they tell you to do something you know it's not supposed to be done, you don't do it. That kind of thing, you know? Just to be themselves. Love themselves. Love themselves. I think that's... What do you think?
Well, I think that's that's a good thing. I mean, you know, and considering because you're pretty world savvy to what's going on in the world politically and everything else with England and
It's terrible.
you know, and that's good advice. You know, use your own brain.
Yeah.
So now, all this time, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
90.
90. Okay, so 90 years of experience. And, you know, it's, most of us haven't lived up, well, I'm a third of the way there. I'm 30. But, this generation moves so quickly.
Oh, they're not. You see, the problem is there are no such thing as teenagers anymore. Not really and truly teenagers. They go from being children
They're not even children.
grown up. Yeah, well, they're not even
They
children
don't let them
anymore.
play anymore.
Oh, that's terrible. That a child can't go out and play. Well, don't dare to go out and play, do they? But, no, it's actually, this is a wicked world we live in. And
Yeah.
it's going to get wickeder.
And I mean, you've seen some wicked things, and you know your time in London, especially. And you think that the world we're in now is gonna get more wicked than that?
Oh, yeah. Yes, if you go into politics, I mean, I don't go into politics myself.
I couldn't agree with you more.
But the way things are going, I mean, well, I can't tell the children what to do. They have to know in their own minds what's right for them and what's wrong. And not listen to other people that have different kinds of ideas than they have.
Okay.
That's about it.
Okay, that works for me. Any questions, Ash?
I'm good with it.
You've been really
You've been quiet. Come on.
You can ask her a question. Go ahead, ask her.
I appreciated listening to your story.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I have anything to ask though.
She's like, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about any kind of questions. I mean, that you were obviously married. You'd only known your husband for a few months, 7, 8, 9 months. And is that, these days people wait 10 years before they get married. Do you think that time changed your marriage at all?
I don't honestly know. I can't see myself married to anybody else. I couldn't go out and after he passed away. I mean, I was still young.
You just turned 60. Not
But
hit
no,
the rubber and I am.
I had no wish for another man. One was enough for me.
And the way that you guys met and that everything unfolded, it's just that's
Well, as I say, I had a very quiet life, really and truly.
You said
And,
before that your dad didn't really approve of your marriage. Did that change over time?
I think so. My dad was a funny man. He was a lovely man. He died a terrible death. He was following my mother up the stairs. And she had refused to have a bar put on the side. I had one put on when I was there. But she turned around and she said, "Oh, Cecil, leave me alone." And he went to turn around, and once he did, he slipped. And he went down the stairs, and there was a dressing table at the bottom of the stairs, and he hit his head. And he shouldn't have died that way. And the funny thing is, years later, it always worried me that he died in such a way, because as I say, he was a lovely man. And I was over here, of course, and I was in the twilight zone, and I was back in Holly Crescent, which is the house in England. And I'm at the top of the stairs, and I'm walking down the stairs. And I opened the living room door, and there was Daddy standing there. He had a clock, when they pulled the chain on,
His cuckoo clock.
cuckoo clock. He was pulling the chain. And I looked at him, I said, Daddy. And he turned around and he gave me the sweetest smile. And just disappeared. I didn't worry about him from that day on.
Mom's one of what? How many kids? 7, 9?
7.
7. You'd have had to visit the house. I went over, and she was living back in this house. You'd have had to seen this house, and I couldn't visualize, no matter how I did it, how with 7 children, plus Aunt Joyce and her sister Vera, they came and lived with you too, didn't they, for a while?
Oh, yeah, but that was not at that house.
It wasn't at that house?
No.
Well, I'm looking at this house, and I swear, that house was no wider than this condo. 2 stories. Upstairs had a front bedroom that was maybe the size of this room. Another room about the size of this room. A little teeny bathroom, and what they called a box room, which was half the size. It was so, they fixed it up for when I visited, and it was, the box room was so small.
Well, it had a single bed in it and a dresser.
It had a, when you couldn't shut the door after they fixed it up. It had a single bed in this wall and a little dresser here. And you had that much room to walk. And that was it in this room. Where are all these people? The kitchen was like a little hallway. Refrigerator wasn't much bigger than that table. You know, it was like, and I'm like, how do you raise a family? And you had an outhouse then out there, not mine,
No, it wasn't.
but
It
when they
wasn't
had
actually. It wasn't actually our house. It was joined to the. It was joined to the house itself.
It still was outside. You went out to get into
No.
it. No,
No,
it's a little teeny place, and it's like, where did all these people?
Yeah.
well, Nancy and I slept in one bed. Raymond slept in the same room in another bed, in this little bed. Reggie was gone. Reggie was married. So Reggie was gone, and I think Cecil was gone. I'm not sure, but I think Cecil was gone.
Raymond was still there. Gilbert.
Oh, Raymond was still there. Gilbert was still there. Well, there they are, right there in that picture.
Yeah, that's her family. This is her family. That's her. That's her family. Taken in their backyard.
Wow. Very neat. It's a big family. That's
Yeah.
my grandfather was one of 13,
Yeah,
and it was
that's a big,
in a tiny house, and it was the first one up was the best one dressed.
I mean, you know, I try to keep some of the pictures out. This was her parents' wedding picture, but that was her mother and father. when they got-
1913,
when
that
they
was
got
taken.
married.
So looking back over, 90 years of experience, is there anything that you would have done differently?
I don't honestly think so.
That's what a lot of, I'd have to say as a, from the younger generation, I wonder if every day I wake up and I wonder, am I doing this right? Am I gonna, be older someday and say, gosh, I wish I would have done this differently? And it's nice to hear you say that you wouldn't.
No, I don't think I would. As I say, it was hard now and then.
Speed bumps on the road to life. That's the way I like to look at it. We've all gone through, and we all have a book. We've all got a book. You know, you hit a certain age where, you know, you can go back and go through it all, and you can hit some really bad speed bumps that throw you in the ditch or the canal or the river, and you start all over again like you're reborn because you got nothing left and you start it all over again. But a lot of the old expressions are true. You know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
And I think for women, it's more so because we're different
Yeah.
species. You know, we run on emotion. We run on our learning experiences. So if it hurts us and it didn't kill us, and we get over the depression of it and the boo-hoos of it, and we say, okay, I'm not going to let this kill me. We're going to get up, shake it off, and go on.
Right.
Or, you know, we all go through the tragedies. You know, Mom's had a lot of tragedies. You know, you go through them.
Right.
The life, the death, the whole thing, you know, but you go. I mean, I'm going to be 68 next week. And if it didn't kill
Well, when
me
I
yet,
say I
it ain't gonna.
don't remember things, after her father got sick and he had to quit work, I took him to Australia because I had one of my brothers, he had twin sons, and they moved to Australia. So when John retired, Cecil retired, they went to Australia to live with their sons. And I took Lefty, that's what we called my husband, Lefty. His name was
Before my
Felty.
grandfather.
Yeah?
Yeah.
His name was Felty, Felty. And they called him Lefty. And of course he was left-handed like her. And I took him to Australia, which he loved. We've gone for 2 months. He spent a month there in hospital. And the doctors told me then that he was at the top of the mountain. In other words, there's only one way he could go, and that was... But I took him back again, and we went to England a couple of times. I saw my mother just before she died. She died a year before he did. And I won't tell you about my mother.
No problem.
You won't hear the nice things she said about her dad.
Oh, he was lovely. Yeah.
So with what's the best advice you have for people who are, you know, the younger generation and dealing with hardships that they come across? You know, hardships in life and...
I don't really know. You have to be very strong. And I guess live through them, that's all you can do.
Okay.
You can't let yourself go. If you can understand what I'm trying to say, you can't let yourself, you've got to work at it. Be strong. And work through it.
Okay.
Stiff upper lip.
Yeah.
I think that's I got a good hour and 20 minutes or so.